What's going on, folks? Welcome back to Bed Boys, your one-stop shop for all your energy drink reviews and performance talks. I'm Christian,
I'm Brian.
and we are the Bed Boys. Today, we got another banger for you. As far as drinks go, I threw it back.
Pause.
I got a throwback drink rather, man. 20 seconds into the episode, we're already acting sus. I'm already acting sus. This is a drink that I feel like I had when I was
throwing it back.
This reminds me of like finals week in college when you're just like cramming or like up all night studying, finishing a project, and I would buy like a 4-pack of these at the beginning of the week. Just fucking
Red Bull?
crush them. No, so this is I haven't had one of these in years, to be honest with you, but it is a Bang Energy. So this is like, it's not one of my favorites, but although I haven't had it in a long time, it's one of like the OG like hardcore energy drinks. Obviously there was Monster, Red Bull, Rockstar, Nas.
This was like the first 300 milligram.
Yeah, this was like the first like 300 milligram energy drink. They were all the rage back in the day. And I picked up the lime pop drop. So I'm looking, it's hoping to be like a lemon lime flavor. I think this is a new flavor that came out earlier this year. So picked it up at a sketchy gas station here in St. Paul. Got it on a 2 for $5.50 though. So, well, that's good. Yeah, still just 300 milligrams of caffeine. We got 0 calories with 2 grams of carbs. Don't know how that works. Got your B vitamin medley in there. And the formula is pretty simple. It's very similar. I would say it's similar to Rain in the fact that it's just shit ton of caffeine, a little bit of vitamins, nothing too crazy. It says it has some amino acids, ultra CoQ10. I remember it used to have like
it used to be the super creatine that they got in trouble for.
Yeah, they no longer have that. But let me go ahead and read the back. Bang Energy. By combining cutting-edge sports nutrition ingredients with time-tested energy drink formulation and innovative new flavor combinations, Bang Energy rocked the beverage world. All Bang fitness products are PhD formulated and sports trainer endorsed. Our unique performance formulation is designed to help stimulate energy levels, improve focus, and increase endurance. With 0 sugar and essential amino acids, we never sacrifice the results you expect for the great taste you deserve. Take risks, be different, and be your own individuality and confidence. Grab a Bang Energy and fuel your destiny. Okay. Is that the guy that owns it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's had a few bangs.
The funniest thing about like what's on the back of like the can is it's all very general and adjacent terms. You know what I mean? It's like
it means everything. It also means nothing.
Yeah, we're sports trainer researched. What? Like, what does that mean, Kobe Bryant?
Yeah, no one ever says that. Wasn't Bang Energy the one where we looked on their website and it was just straight promo? Like it was.
Yeah, it was all. Let me find it real quick.
It was just like girls in bikinis, right?
Yeah, it was just.
Parties?
Yeah, it was just girls in bikinis at parties and like on the beach.
Yeah, it's just like it's like a Lonnie but more caffeine essentially and a little bit trashier.
They've switched it up now.
Oh, it's not the same now?
Yeah, it's a little different. Like they've removed many of the women. There's not a lot of feminine energy on this anymore.
Oh, events. They're at the Puerto Rican Day Parade.
Oh, there it is. Ooby Dooby.
Yeah.
So they have Ooby Dooby with locator. The girls, but yeah, let's go store locator. Wherever drinks are sold.
Oh yeah, they literally have like every like Dollar General quick. Okay.
Yeah, the fact that this is at like the Dollar General now, like that's weird. Let me see here. Explore, contact us, company, products, promotions. What's promotion? Oh, okay, cool.
No promotions at this time. They banged the promotions.
They banged them. Products. The product list is now just cans. There's no women holding the cans. They used to have a black cherry vanilla that was good.
The one flavor that I miss is they had like a root beer blaze.
That was pretty good. I like that one, and they used to have an iced tea lemonade too. They were like original with the iced tea lemonade. Any
Yep,
means possible. Whoa,
gamer soldier type.
I think
Oh,
this
tell me this
guy's
is for.
that's a streamer.
Okay, I was gonna say this is definitely for a video game team. So it's just a flavor collab with a streamer.
Must be.
Okay,
Yeah, I think they're all streamers. That's
I
that
have
can't
no.
Kai Sinet.
Okay,
I'm
yeah, I
hip.
don't play video
I'm
games.
I'm hip.
I'm not. I'm not.
I see what the kids are into nowadays. Puerto Rican Day Parade. Wow, they've really had a fall off. They can't even get
Yeah,
the girls on the website anymore.
yeah. But anyways, that's what I have for my drink.
My drink, I'm ripping a variety.
You got a variety pack there.
I do. I have a blueberry muffin cold brew from Wandering Bear. I previously reviewed the chocolate version of this, and I'm doing the vanilla Oikos protein shake. And then I'm ripping, of course, another cherry limeade because I bought a case. Because why not? So let's pop that
Pop that
top,
top.
talk some shop. Let me get the amazing. Let me pop my second top here. Only thing I don't love about this is like the film of the wrapper. That always makes me upset.
Not a fan.
Nah, because it never rips cleanly.
I'm getting heavy on the lime, which it is a lime pop drop. So accurate description, I'll at least say. See how it makes me feel.
I feel like you want to bang,
Yeah, I'm ready to bang out this episode. That's for sure.
bang, bang,
I
bang.
was ready that for that regardless, though.
This guy's ready to throw it back.
Yep. Anyways, we do have some somewhat educational topics for today. So
And
let you lead
some
us
knob.
off. Yeah, and then some non-educational ones that I came up with, of course. But we'll get to those later. Let's prioritize the intelligence so we don't lose too many brain cells.
Yes. I want your opinion and your thoughts on the case for aerobic development. It's become one of the most hot button issues inside just sports performance in general is train speed, train speed. The aerobic capacity will improve if you train speed. If you change speed, the anaerobic will influence the aerobic. You don't need, you know, you don't need to build a base. You don't need to do this, etc. You have Tony Holler as a front runner in like the feed the cats kind of space, and then elsewhere you see other people kind of just talking about we only sprint because we don't run on the field. We don't run. We sprint there. What's your take on that?
I think it's important. I think obviously more important for certain sports than for others. But I do think it can get overlooked at some point. I definitely think it's important to obviously sprint, but also do more aerobic work. I'd be interested, and we can kind of dive into this a little bit later, of kind of that like middle ground where like people tend to kind of try to stay out of. They try to do like work, 90% and above of top speed, and then 70% and below of top speed. They don't really work that middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
Another question is, how are you categorizing like aerobic development? When I think of aerobic development, I think of like percentage of heart rate and like heart rate zones. That's kind of where my mind goes. Like obviously zone 2 work was all the craze and is like still like very like prevalent in today. So like zone 2, like 120 to 140 beats per minute, like get your zone 2 in, helps with recovery, helps with all that good stuff, aerobic development. I think thinking in terms of like baseball, I think a lot of times athletes get a lot of aerobic development in their actual sport, especially like with baseball. Like it's a lot of lower intensity, a lot of time on feet, a lot of just like, if you're taking swings in the cage or if you're throwing or if you're doing like a defensive drill where you're taking ground balls, throwing to first, going to the back of the line, stuff like that. I think we don't give enough credit for in terms of like that is like low level like aerobic work to an extent. Again, we'll use catapult. We don't have the catapult. You can use catapult with a heart rate monitor. It's just a little bit more finicky because you have to wash the actual vest
Mhm.
a different way than you wash like regular clothes. Otherwise, they'll just ruin it. So I'd be interested to see like what heart rate data would say like during like a practice like that. Um, but like you said, like if you just do sprint work and you don't have anything to like fall back on, one, I feel like it could impede your recovery, and two, like I feel like it's gonna, if you have no base and you have no work capacity, like once, I don't know, at some point like the top is gonna fall because there's no foundation under it. It's like the similar thing with like in the weight room. You're not gonna have, or most people wouldn't have guys or gals do like a 1 RM test or hit like super heavy sets of like 1 to 3 reps on their first week in the gym. They're probably going to build them up a little bit. They're going to build a base of a little bit more volume with less intensity, maybe a little bit more density, and kind of scale that up over time to less volume, more intensity. So I just think of like similar concept with running in that aspect, that you probably want to do a little bit of sprinting from the get go, but also kind of focus more if you have like a longer off season on that aerobic piece. Um, the thing I'm interested in is like I said, like a lot of people don't like to go in that like,
Middle
if we're
zone.
talking, yeah, like if we're talking in terms of like percentage of top speed, nobody likes to go in that like 75 to 90. And if we're talking about like heart rate zones, like you hear people talking about zone two work, you don't really hear people talking as much about like, all right, let's get them like 80% of max heart rate and get some good distance, get a good amount of time in there, which I think
Yeah, that'd be like
is
zone
super important.
three.
Yeah, which I think it depends on like how you want to categorize it, but the fact is that that stuff happens all the time in sport. Like we say a lot of times, like athletes rarely reach like their top speed in sport because they don't really have a lot of times like a straight line. And this is track and field. Like usually, more of the top speed and high speed exposures happen on somewhat of a curve. Like if you're talking about soccer, football, stuff like that. So is it worth it to kind of work in that middle ground in terms of like both percentage of top speed and or heart rate, because we know that that's going to happen in the game, or do we kind of let the game and or practice itself take care of that? But I definitely think it's important, to be clear.
Yeah, like it's been such a thing that everybody wants to just negate the tempo training. I think number one, everyone jumped on it because there was like some good results and like, I'll use like Tony Holler as an example as like feed the cats. And I think there's warrant to like training max speed and those kinds of things. And he kind of went like counterculture because he overcorrected from the vast other side of like, we're only going to train, 110s and, we're going to do 13 of those and that's our speed training, which I think the hard part is like when we use the worst example of one thing to go to like the extreme other side, it's like, okay, well, we do lose that quote unquote like middle ground, maybe not necessarily in the terms of the, speed kind of area, but we lose the middle ground of like good aerobic development that can aid max speed training. So that's like number one. I think number two, um, like when we talk about speed reserve, and this was a good conversation that I had with Coach DeMarco. Like the assumption is that everyone decays at the same rate at like 3%. If you aren't fit and you don't have a robust aerobic system, your
You drop
speed,
off pretty quick.
yeah, your speed decay is going to be extreme. You might hit that, 22 miles an hour, but then if you're going to decay by 10 to 15% every second, that's going to be tough, you know? So Like, I think having a large foundation of a good aerobic base, and I don't know whether that's zone 2 or if it's going to be, zone 3, zone 4, where we're in that 80 to 90% max heart rate, but not quite 100%. Maybe there is something warranted to that. Anecdotally, I've added a ton more. I don't want to say just aerobic training. We trained, like, last year, my sprinters trained, 2 tempo sessions a week with 2 sprint sessions a week plus, pre-meet if we're in season and we go to a practice, those kind of things. But I've modified a lot now and we've seen a lot better results. So this is anecdotal evidence, but to where we've added far more volume in the aerobic based days. They're running, some repeat 300s for these 400 runners. My 200 runners are doing very similar workouts. Obviously, it's a little bit more walked back on the short sprinters in the 100 and like the hurdlers, who they're going to be far more, I guess, limited in terms of aerobic like volume, but they're still getting, 2,000 meters in a session. The other piece of that being I think there's a lot of secondary and tertiary effects of aerobic training that we often forget, especially if you do it in maybe not a zone 2, because it's a completely different gait. But number one, we get lactate clearing, which is a preferred substance in the body in order to produce the muscular contractions as lactate. We can increase the lactic threshold, which if we can increase lactic threshold because we can process lactate better via the oxygen aerobic system, we're then able to withstand higher amounts of volume. So if you get to a meet, maybe you have to run a relay, 2 individual events, and maybe you're in the 4x4. Now you're able to clear that, rewarm up, process, and have good performances. And we don't see that massive decay of performance. So there's a lot of other things in there. Tempo training, it's hard to do. Like, tempo training is more of an RPE based a lot of the times, or we go off of a percentage of the best performance. And even then, it's like maybe you kind of ride into that 80%, that middle ground, because someone didn't sleep that night before. It's not a perfect system. But with heart rate, like, it's hard because the heart rate will usually kind of lag behind the reps, and you'll see that heart rate spike afterwards. And then you're kind of playing catch up and seeing if you can like regulate back down before the next rep. But if you're in like the 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 work to rest, it's like, are you going to have that kind of like recovery that you're aiming for? The other aspect too. Yeah, go ahead.
You prefer to go off times and or like RPE versus heart rate when it comes to like, all right, I'm shooting for this.
Yeah, I would say so. Like, if we're doing
it does lag behind a little bit.
If we're doing like, say, like repeat 100s, like, it's a very easy tempo session is 10 to 12 by 100. That's one of our introductory ones, about 1,000 to 1,200 meters of volume. We're going at about 17 to 18 seconds. That's, if our average girl runs, say 11.9, that's very low intensity enough to where they can hit it. It's not going to dramatically change their gait, which I don't want, but it's also like enough to recover from and repeat and have the aerobic stimulus. And then I use a lot of like 16 to 17 to 18 second as 100-meter splits during, if we move to, say, a 200, it's like my basis will kind of be like, if we're going to do repeat 200s in the sense of an aerobic development, I'm going to base it off of a 26. I'll probably add, a couple seconds here and there, increase the time, the rest, etc. And then we'll be able to go from there. Same thing with like a 300. We're going to base it off of like that, like 17 to 18 second 100-meter split, add some time, have the recovery, 400, 350, whatever it is, you just kind of base it off that model, and then you go from there. The nice thing about that is, number one, it provides familiarity. Number two, we don't change the gait too much. We're able to build a larger amount of volume and stack work capacity. When they're able to stack work capacity, those intensive bouts, again, a lot of this being anecdotal, the intensive bouts have become higher quality because I'm able to get, say, 2 to 3 large intensive bouts of speed endurance to specific endurance, which is, you know, uh, when we had Cal on, I think he has a very good, kind of hyperbole of, you know, the intensity will elicit the adaptation, the volume will dictate how far it goes. Um, and at the end of the day, we do need to stack some volume because we want the adaptations to increase and go further. So if all I can ever get is, you know, 3 flying 30s out of a hard practice session, we're probably not in a great spot. Not for a 400 runner, not for a 200 runner, maybe a 60-meter girl, and that's worked. I've had that work before, but as the reps get longer, it's like you need the repetitions, and I think you need a true aerobic development. And then if you speak a little bit more in like track terms, it's like those strength pieces, where it's like, hey, we're going to do blocks before this session, get your block workout in, and then you're going to run a 5-4-3. We're going to give you 6 to 8 minutes rest, but it's not going to be blazing fast all out. They're going to be a little slower, maybe at like that 80 to 85%, where it's almost like the Cone Filippi kind of deadlift chart, where you set your max as what you want to achieve, and then all of your percentages and those top sets and those works that you're doing are based off of that new deadlift. So you would do like, say, 500 pounds is like your goal. You're going to hit 2x2 at 80% of 500, and then you're going to go down to like a 6x3 afterwards at 65% of that. You're really working at, 90% of what your current max is maybe, and then working off of 70%. But where the goal is to achieve and sustain in training to get to that piece. That's kind of how we frame some of our aerobic sessions to make sure that we can get there. And yeah, some of it will be in that 80% where you might have systemic fatigue. And is it truly aerobic versus maybe a little bit lactic? Yeah, maybe not. But like the goal is to achieve that higher performance. If you told a power lifter you could never lift in, 80, 75 to 85%, it had to be either 90%
Or
or
60,
or
less than
60 and below.
75%. Yeah.
Yeah, they'd look at you like you're fucking nuts. So why do we treat anything related to speed in a similar manner?
Yeah.
I don't.
And I think we've talked about this too. It's like most of the work weight room wise, a lot of it's done in that, 70 to 85% range. You want to probably touch like 85, 90 plus percent like every, few weeks, or like build up to that depending on what type of athlete you're working with, how like training age, time of year, stuff like that. And then you'll probably at some point of the year you might work at sub 70%, give or take, if you're doing tempo work or just like longer, like higher rep sets, stuff like that. But a majority of the work is done kind of in that, like, it comes at a much different like cost too. Like
Mhm.
people say like, oh, like why wouldn't I just want to like, they see like sprinting is like, okay, that's the best adaptation I can get. So why wouldn't I just do that all the time? It's because it's
You
also
can't.
like, yeah, it's also, yeah, it's like, it's a great stimulus and a great like adaptation potentially, but it also comes at like the greatest like physiological cost to the CNS, which is why you can only, you really can't do it like every single day.
Mhm.
Otherwise it's not really, it doesn't really turns into not a sprint at some point. Um, and like DeMarco's talked about this too, about like the value of like submaximal work. Like if you're looking into like West Side methods, like dynamic effort, where it's going to be submaximal but moving the weight with
With high
max
intent.
intent. Yeah, which should always obviously be the goal, but like that comes, you can get the same like overall total work, total tonnage. We're talking like
And
weight room
force.
wise, right? But it comes at like a lesser physiological cost, and guys don't feel like they got
They're
hit by a
beat up.
train. And I think we can kind of extrapolate that into running a little bit. Like people are going to be able to handle a good amount of aerobic, like a lot of volume of aerobic work, especially if you build them up over time and not feel beat to shit that day the next day versus like if you have someone like rip like even like earlier this week like we ripped like three like 30-yard sprints and like I was cooked the next day. Like that's a lot. Like even like obviously I'm just like a washed up D3 athlete, so I'm not like a I'm not I'm no one special, but like athletes are just going to feel like a little bit more cooked if you're only doing like high speed training, and then if there's not like a base that was built before to help like facilitate that recovery and be able to bounce back. And I think if you find that if you have that aerobic work in there, you might end up being able to potentially do more high speed work because they're going to be able to recover a little bit more in between. If not, you can be able to get away with a little more frequency or a little bit more volume when you do your speed work. So
When you're considering like some of your aerobic trainings for baseball, like where do you typically go to? Like what's been how you kind of attack it?
I think this is one thing that I miss about like training. Baseball is obviously a field sport, but like I miss about like football, soccer, lacrosse is baseball. I think one thing you have to do that's a little bit distinct from a lot of other sports is like just get a lot of time on feet. Not to say that just like walking around and standing around is going to make you aerobically fit, but just like a standard like work day in baseball, like the game is 3 hours long, and it's a game of stand around, wait for something to happen, and you may have a guy do almost nothing and get no action in right field, or you may have a guy rack up a ton of like high speed distance in the same position. So I think early on, and it's a little bit different too because I think the skill work takes care of a good amount of it, but I think we also get a lot of that aerobic work through like small sided games. I think like agility and change of direction work is kind of that like middle ground. Obviously, we're going to have like, all right, we may have a tempo day, or and then you got like your max speed day, or so you're hitting both sides of the spectrum. I think like agility, change of direction, or just like a small sided game, you're going to probably get maybe not in that middle ground of like speed wise, but it's going to be kind of that middle ground. It's going to be like aerobically challenging, and you might get your heart rate up or might get to a point where it's like a little bit in that kind of like middle ground. Um, for position players, like I said, like time on feet, especially like time on feet, like in cleats, I think that's a big one too. Is like standing around just in like flats is a lot different than like having cleats on, especially like for your feet. Um, So I think we try to build that through like skill work. Like for example, like when we brought guys back like early January, the skill work was pretty like minimal, and then we and the work in like the weight room in the field was a little bit more of our training economy, and that slowly kind of shifted as we got closer and closer to spring training. We did a lot more running on field. We kind of progressed like some of the distances on our like max speed stuff. We opened up the spaces on some of our small sided games. We introduced more like curved running at like higher velocities, and then obviously the skill work just took over a little bit more of the schedule. So I think I don't have a great answer as to like we're not out there doing like tempos a whole lot, just because if a guy takes outfield and then hits in the cage and then does base running, they're doing stuff with us, we're not left with a ton of training economy. And I think that like you can say like, oh, now we need to like develop aerobic, we need to develop aerobic fitness. Like, okay, like you don't think that like them being on field for 4 hours and like obviously like walking between stations, taking defense, taking base running, you don't think that they're getting like a decent amount of like aerobic work from that?
Hmm.
Now we're probably missing. Do I think that we do like a perfect job? No, I think there's definitely some stuff we could do. And something that I think that I've been thinking about too is like once we get in season and we have like our everyday guys that are going to play. We play 6 games a week. And a lot of times we'll have guys that play 5 to 6 games a week. They might play 5 games in the field and then they'll DH one day. Then you have some guys that are more of like utility guys and they're not everyday guys. They may step in 2 to 3 games a week. It's like, do we need to be, and we try, do we need to be doing more work with those guys outside of that when they're not playing? I'd say the answer is yes. And we usually try to get that through skill work as much as we can, whether that's through, you know, hey, can we have this guy just like power shag during BP? He's a little bit like low on just overall total distance. Or if we're like, all right, this guy's acute to chronic is a little bit low, let's get with him and get some extra speed work, ideally with like base running or like an outfield drill. And if not, we can just kind of do it like straight line, like sprint work. So that's something I've been thinking about. Pitchers is another interesting one because obviously, like when we talk about like energy system development for like a pitcher, the most specific thing they can obviously do for that is like max intent throwing and like throwing off the mound. But obviously, it's like sprinting. You can't throw max effort off the mound as a pitcher every single day. Like it's if you're a starter, you're gonna start once a week. If you're a reliever, depending on how far you go, you're gonna throw 1 to 3 times a week in most scenarios. So it's interesting. Something I've been thinking about is like once in a while I hear like it's usually relievers and they say like I felt gassed out there, and I'm just like, is that like a throwing problem? Are they not built up enough there, or is that like a cardiorespiratory problem? Is that like a did we not do enough like aerobic work with them? Did we not do enough more like I mean even like anaerobic work? Because you think especially now with the pitch clock, you got to deliver a pitch essentially every 20 seconds, and you're going to do that. That's a very high intensity. A pitch is a very quick motion, but it's very high intensity, especially on the arm. But like, I know they messed around. I would assume that the guy's heart rate gets pretty high, especially when they're pitching. So I don't know. And people can simulate that through like bullpens and stuff like that. But I don't think it's obviously not the same as like a game environment. So that's got me kind of wondering if we should be doing like a little bit more on maybe almost like the anaerobic side for those guys, just with like the work to rest ratios there, and whether that needs to be on feet or off feet. Because I think another thing that's interesting too, I think you can have like, if you're looking at like heart rate zones, you can be aerobic, like just doing like a workout in the weight room, but then still be gassed when you get to like running in your sport and on the field. Like it's not the same. Same thing with like, oh, I did like zone 2 or I did, whatever, zone 4 intervals on a bike. Yeah, like your lungs are going to be good, but like the musculature is going to be a lot different from just like riding a bike versus like running. So that's something that I've been kind of thinking of as we've talked about this. And I
Yeah,
think
I know
there's
we
kind of like a balance there with like on feet and off feet, especially with like depending on like if we talk about like football, like lineman versus skill. Like lineman, like if you want them to do like a lot of extra, you have to like also realize like, hey, like you probably don't want them doing on feet conditioning. If you're going to try to do some extra aerobic work, you might want to throw them on a bike or a rower or something like that.
and I
I
know
don't know if we would.
we've talked about this like off camera. Kind of like what we're probably going to move to. Like Cal and I, we're talking about some of their aerobic development for their pitchers on the baseball team, and one of it was, setting a pitch clock, and you're hitting, 3 steps or 5 steps, which is basically going to equate to about 5 yards every 20 seconds. Can you get the system to clear? Can you build work capacity? And, in an off season, do you kind of use it as a way to at least build a physiological response? It's not going to necessarily be as specific as, say, throwing,
No.
60 throwing 60 pitches. But if you're able to have the entire body have a global stimulus and be able to repeat outputs, in a sense, like does the athlete become, quote unquote, more robust in order to handle the more specific thing when you kind of transfer it over and then say, okay, now you're going to do 60 pitches. I think there's something to be said in the aspect of a high intensive bout that is quote unquote a little more limited on recovery and having to repeat that just for the sake of, if they can go through and do it, they can kind of move towards, moving into the specific aspect of throwing, but you're also not straining that ulnar the same way that you would if you're throwing 60 pitches. especially right off the bat? Is it more beneficial to throw 10 pitches and do maybe like this RSA aspect to it instead of trying to go up to 60 immediately and then they're fucked up from there?
Yeah, and I think you got to be careful, just like of trying to be like overly specific. Like I think the obviously like the best thing for talking about like arm health is probably going to be, along with like obviously like training and stuff like that, is going to be like a well thought out and good well progressed like throwing program. Like a guy isn't going to be able to go from 10 to 60 pitches like that and expect to like stay healthy. It's just not going to happen at high intensity. Um, and a lot of times I don't, I guess you got to find out like what the limiting factor is. Is it the arm, or is it like the energy system? A lot of times I think it's probably the arm for the most part, especially because like these guys, if you're throwing with high intent like consistently on like a consistent basis, obviously when you get into the game it's a little bit different scenario. You're probably going a little bit more like, you're not really seeing guys throw like 50 pitch bullpens unless they're like building up in the off season, versus like a starter is going to go like, north of 50 pitches pretty frequently. But you're also having the adrenaline from the game, um, in the game environment. So I'm not sure. It's something I'm definitely gonna have to think about though, because especially with it being, baseball being such a long season. Another thing I think you're at risk at, especially with guys that, position guys that aren't playing every day, if they're not like continuing to do stuff like extra work to make sure that they maintain, whether it's an aerobic base and or speed qualities, like those need to be like touched on weekly. Is it the same for pitchers with, obviously they're going to throw, but like if they're not doing, enough energy system development throughout the course of the season, like you are going to detrain. Like it's a 6 month season, it's no questions asked. Like if you don't
Yeah.
take care of that stuff, you will detrain. So that's why like I think the notion of like maintaining in season, well, I think it's like it's good in, like it has the right intentions. You can't go with that mindset, I don't think, in pro baseball personally. Because if you aim to maintain in season, you're going to detrain. If you aim to at least like try to like push when you can, you might gain some and at least you'll maintain. But if you look at the mindset of like, all right, now it's in season, I'll maintain, you're gonna slide backwards. You're gonna lose the progress you made in the off season.
Yeah. Question for you on this. I'm kind of changing topics here. What do you think about eccentric versus concentric training within like a hamstring?
Mm.
Now, I'm potentially putting like our basis is always eccentric will provide, the largest strain, which will then build the most muscular tissue. But if we think about it, especially within the hamstring, this is the weird part about it. Most injuries occur in the concentric portion, right? We have the contraction that is going to probably elicit some kind of piece. And then obviously, like based off of like where they're contacting the ground, that's usually going to be where, is it an overstretch during that contraction, etc. When you're looking at developing the hamstring, maybe not necessarily from a hypertrophy stimulus, obviously larger pronation angles will dictate the fact of is it going to pop or not pop, but in a sense of like wiring and motor unit kind of recruitment and just seeing like those like patterns, how much of your training are you kind of dictating towards the concentric portion outside of like a compound lift?
Mm. I tend to go to the one you didn't mention a lot of times in season, which is isometric, to throw you for a little bit of a loop.
I'm okay with
This
that.
one's tough. Yeah, this is also something that I've been talking to people about, because a lot of times our position guys will train before the game, and obviously we want to find a way to get stress through the hamstrings within our training. But I also don't want guys ripping, sets of heavy RDLs and then going out and playing a game. Ideally, not saying you can't do it, but like,
Hmm.
what's a way to like get stress through the hamstring enough that it's going to help keep them strong and healthy without putting them at like a risk of like potentially like beating them up during the game or putting them at a larger risk for. I think the optimal answer would be, all right, you just hit your hamstring stuff like post game every day, but not always ideal. Some guys don't like to lift it, 10 p.m. if we have a night game. Um, that's why I like isometric training a lot, whether it's like a single leg hammy bridge, and then you can progress that to, hammy bridge on like a roller, or you can do like a GHR ISO or almost like a prone Nordic ISO, stuff like that. You're still going to be able to get high force, but without that like eccentric stress. Um, Now, obviously, if you're doing like an RDL, you're getting eccentric and concentric.
Yeah.
And I think you got to be, it's different too. Like, I think with a pitcher, like a lot of times we'll say, like, oh, like you probably wouldn't think like you want to do like a lot of like long eccentrics and tempo work during the season. But if you have like a starting pitcher, they're not going to pitch for like another 5 days. You might actually be
You
able to
have
fit that
time.
into, yeah, like you can fit that into their training, which is something that I think is like that advice like makes sense in most scenarios, but there's always like a caveat to every rule. So,
Yeah.
but I tend to go like favor, especially like this year, just like I've been trying to wrap my head around like, damn, like if I was actually playing 6 baseball games a week, like would I want to
Could
do
you?
this and
Yeah.
would I want to do this and rip a game? And it's like you don't want to go too far where it's like, all right, like I just want to have them do any hamstring stuff. That's not the answer. But how can I make it in a place where you're getting a stimulus, we're getting force through the muscle, but not putting you at an egregious risk of like pulling something. So a lot of times, if a guy will lift like post game, that's a good. I might switch stuff around and be like, all right, this is a good time to do like if we're doing like an RDL variation, or if a guy's doing pregame, I'll most likely go with some sort of like isometric variation, and then obviously like the volume is going to dictate a lot of that. Probably not going to do sets of 8 on like a barbell RDL
Hmm.
pre or post game in season. Not saying you can't do it, but a lot of times I've been like so far I've been opting for more of like single leg variations, whether that's like a B stance RDL or like a single leg dumbbell or landmine RDL, or like I said, more of like the isometric stuff, just to kind of overall lessen the total stress. Obviously you're not going to be able to load up like a dumbbell, so like dumbbell RDL as much as you are like a bilateral barbell RDL. So, but I also think like in the off season before you're playing games, that's when you really need to focus on like tempo work, like I said, like a tempo work on a barbell RDL or a dumbbell RDL where you're really focusing more on the eccentric part, because I think that sets you up well to continue to do some of that stuff during the season. Because if you start that during the season and you haven't exposed them to any like eccentric work, not saying it's too late, but it's a lot tougher. So
I'm
obviously, I'm
just.
a big fan of full range of motion, but
Yeah.
you also have to not think like a meathead all the time. You have to think of the best interest of the athletes. So yeah,
No. Yeah.
neither of what you said. I like isometric, but they're all
I
important.
I like an isometric. The hard part is do we just keep adding time? Do we keep adding time? Do you add weight? Like I had this discussion with one of our coaches. He's our women's basketball and women's volleyball strength coach. And he's like, with an ISO, whether it be like a lunge ISO, a hamstring bridge, any of those, he's like, you get good at the thing. What happens once you're good at the thing? What do you do then? Do you just keep adding more time? We don't have more time. That's our most valuable asset. So what do you do then? Do you add a plate? Well, does that always help in where you're looking at? Like, is that providing enough? Like, he's like, at a certain point, like you got to really load it to get the response that you're looking for. And he's like, I don't know if you can really load a lot of that stuff. And part of me is like, I do like ISOs. I love like a long duration ISO for like a longevity reasons, like a resiliency capacity. But I think there's a warrant. Like I don't know what the I don't know what the answer is, so I'm questioning it always right now. And part of me is I keep kind of going back to the is it a concentric portion? We think about like when we get to, some people will move to like partial range of motions or concentric only variations in like a squat pattern or a bench press where it's like we're going to pin press, we're going to pin squat, or well, you really take out a lot of it in like a box squat. Like you limit the eccentric, but you are prioritizing the concentric variation of this. Why do we not do that for the hamstring? Is it just because the modalities aren't there? Or is there something else? You know?
So you're
But like
saying, I guess, like the version of that for hamstring would be like a
grab a roller, put a band on it. One of those hamstring rollers with trays.
mhm,
Hey, you have two sets of five like single leg hamstring concentric curls.
yeah, and then
Or
you're just letting it
letting
go,
it,
or lowering with two legs to limit
yeah,
the
yeah,
eccentric.
limit the eccentric strain. Or like, if you have the capability of like, a four-way hip or like a hamstring curl machine, you're prioritizing the the concentric portion, right? When we do a four-way hip, it is almost like 90% of the time like some sort of concentric portion. Obviously, when you're standing, you have the elongation of the hamstring, but it's a more concentric portion of the hip.
Mhm.
That contraction. Why are we not doing that with the hamstring?
Yeah, thinking like concentric only RDL, potentially go
It's a
for the
deadlift.
box. Yeah, but go straight leg.
Yeah.
I don't know. I also think like you made a good point about like the ISOs. Like, do you just keep adding time when that's like the thing you don't have? You can also make
That's
the
that's
distinction, obviously, between like yielding and like overcoming. Like, obviously, like a
yeah.
single like hammy bridge is like a yielding ISO. It's going to be a lower stress. Most people
But
are going to progress that by adding time, or like, all right, now I'm going to add a roller under the foot for a little less stability aspect. Versus like, all
and
right, like a prone Nordic
prone.
ISO is going to be an overcoming, more stressful, but you can get a lot of stress through the hamstring and say like only like a 3 to 5 second rep. So maybe that, you could do like an ISO ramp. All right, start at 50%, ramp up to 100, hold that for 2 seconds. You do, 1 to 2 reps of that even to start, and that's going to give you a really good stimulus if you're actually like pushing hard.
Mhm.
Um, Again, it comes at a different
Cost.
cost. Um, Another thing I like to try to do throughout like the training week is like I like to make sure have one variation of like a hamstring where it's a hinge and one like knee flexion, nothing
Hmm.
revolutionary. Whether that's could be like an ISO with you laying on the ground and putting your leg bent at 90 on a bench and driving into the bench for like a 90-90 ISO on the hamstring, or usually it's like some sort of like roller hamstring curl variation, whether it be like a two up, one down if you want to focus on more eccentric, or the idea that you just had was just like a one up, two down if you want to focus more on the concentric, or you can just go bilateral up and down. Um, but I like to try to figure out a way to like structure that in a way where you can get both some sort of hinge, whether it's going to be like usually like a variation of like an RDL, and then some sort of like knee flexion, whether that comes from like an ISO or um, an actual traditional concentric eccentric. So, and then also obviously we know like high speed running is another thing that's going to help like keep the hamstrings healthy. But I don't, like you said, like just doing high speed running, like yes, it's probably the best thing for your hamstrings. But if we kind of make this analogy of if there's no base of actual strength, which you can build in the weight room or through submaximal running, can that top, can the bottom kind of collapse out from under you if you're just doing high speed running, but not actually like putting more like stress through the muscle via like traditional resistance training where you're taking it through its full range of motion, where it's the muscles getting fully lengthened and contract under higher loads, more force, less velocity.
I just, yeah. it's something that's been on my mind. And it's something that I think could be answered by some of our OG heroes.
Oh, good
And
segue.
by OG heroes, I think guys and gals who really went after it in the beginning days of YouTube, the OG fitness YouTubers. I bet they'd probably have some kind of take on that.
Yeah, probably a shitty one.
I was gonna say it might not be the smartest take, but it might be a take. Now, there's a
Yeah.
couple more than others who would just be like, stop being soft, go train them hard and see what happens. And then there's a couple others that'd be like, is that optimal? I think we know who we're talking about in that sense. And then we obviously have a couple who would be like, well, you got to be smart. It's this, that, or the other. But what were the best OG fitness YouTubers?
Man, for me it was Christian Guzman, Max Tuning, Chris Jones with it was the OG Physiques of Greatness. And then he rebranded to Pump Chasers. It was those three. Matt Ogus was in there. Obviously, you have like the OG like Gymshark crew, like Matt Ogus. I think Chris Jones was a part of that as well, actually, and Christian
Yeah.
Guzman. Was Chuny never a part of Gymshark?
No, he
No, he
wasn't even
wasn't. He
he
was
wasn't even an alpha elite guy. He had ever
yeah, he
forward.
was always on his own. And then obviously you got like Steve Cook, Jeff Side, like the aesthetic crew. But for me, it was Guzman tuning. Nick Bear was up there for me.
Nick Bear was
Um,
really up there for me.
Nick Bear was really up there. We were talking about this before, dude. Rich Piana. Shout out Eric Yang. He's one of our catchers. He's a big Rich Piana fan. We've been reminiscing over old Rich Piana videos.
For anyone that like is too young and they don't
Rest in
understand
peace, man.
how goated this human being was, Rich
Yeah,
Piana was absolutely a monster. He was diabolically huge. I could never tell if he wore fake contacts though with his eyes. I always
yeah, his
thought he
eyes
had
are
like
freaking weird, dude.
but he was genuinely so massive. He's famous for the 8-hour arm workout, which was basically 16 workouts that he just did for 8
16 mini
hours.
workouts. Yeah,
But like this guy was huge. He has passed away, unfortunately, but like I hate to say it, but like we kind of saw that one coming.
yeah, really unfortunate, but
Real carbs and protein. The 5% by Rich Piana.
yeah, no, he had a lot of like he had his own supplement brand.
His subs weren't third party tested. I'll tell you that right now.
No, 100% not. I love how like he had a supplement called Real Food. He'd be like,
Hmm.
it's real fucking food. So basically, like I think it was like sweet potato, like
Yep.
powdered sweet potatoes essentially. Um, and it
Bicep
was funny
veins like a
because like,
roadmap of Iowa.
yep. And he's like, yeah, dude, sweet potatoes. Because like, did you know that they take like exogenous testosterone is like somehow they get that from like yams? I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either, but he's just like, that's a great way to get more testosterone is eat
Yeah, like I think
yams.
you'd have to eat like 1,000 yams to like even like get. But I don't know how that works. How do you find that out? But like, let alone like extract testosterone from like yams. But
Yeah.
um,
This is
yeah,
a guy who would eat 1,000 yams.
yeah, 100%, 12 meals a day. He was up there, and then like let's say like more of the new age. It sounds weird. I started getting really into like Mike Isertel, Renaissance Periodization, which now I don't really watch him quite as much. I really like. I haven't watched their videos in a while. I think I stopped watching them one just because I don't have as much time,
Yeah.
which is probably a good overall good thing. But I also feel like they've been a little bit more like clickbaity, like less focused on the content, more like it's still
I
like good
just,
stuff, but
I love
it's
his
not.
like very intentional blink.
Yeah, yeah, he does that a lot. I like their like legitimate like lectures that they have, like the RP University lectures. Like I still have notes on my computer that I would take from those, like on like the
Those were phenomenal.
volume landmarks for like hypertrophy, stuff like that. I really liked them. I got a little bit into like Jeff Nippard. He's kind of more of that like evidence based crowd, whatever you want to call it. It was just a little bit too. I like some of his stuff. I like how he like includes research, but I think you can go too far with trying to be like an optimizer. Um,
I just I could never get into like Jeff Nippard, but you know who really like genuinely really liked. He wasn't really a YouTuber until I consider him an OG, even though he didn't really start like YouTube until the last like 8 years and like really getting into that. But he was an OG like online, but just an OG to be an OG, and that's Dave Tate. And that's why now it makes sense when I say
oh,
that. Like Dave Tate was, I mean, he was West Side Guy, founder of Elite FTS, like, and then like he was really like when I talk about like it wasn't even like YouTube like talking about fitness, he was writing articles on Elite FTS and founding that. And then now he's got like over the past like 8 years, he's brought up like the Table Talk podcast, things like that, and
really
like
good
has
podcast.
has been on a lot more. Same thing with like Mark Bell.
Yeah,
Um,
Mark Bell.
both of them, they weren't into fitness in the sense of like they want to be a competitor in bodybuilding and they just want to look diced. Like they were all about like how do we get strong, and now like Mark Bell, like he's changed how he trains. Dave Tate like still trains like a fucking powerlifter, like an elite level powerlifter at like 65 years old. But like theirs was both like you want information on how to get real strong, that's where you go. And then
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I think Dave did really well for I think the field, and I don't think like just in the sense of like strength and conditioning or powerlifting, but I think genuinely just fitness as a whole, is he really kind of revolutionized the idea of a quest for knowledge. And I think he took a lot of that from like Louis, to be honest, having been around him and stuff. But it was always like, let me get good writers for Elite FTS for our blog. I want really good articles. I want thought provoking things. You know, let's train the mind like we train the body. Let's go after it. And I think that whether people want to believe it or not, there's a sense that that influenced a lot of like OG fitness YouTubers, right? They
Mm-hmm.
talk about how they got started, like bodybuilding.com, like forums. Max Tuning went and said, like, I used to be on there and just talking and, writing articles and being on the forums. And it's like, that's what Elite FTS is, just to, on a different side of the spectrum. But like, just providing so much value for, I think about like when I was young and I like first got in like 13, 14 years old, like eighth grade, like going to freshman year, wanted to lift for football. And it was like, got on my mom's computer, like Googled like strength workouts. And it's like, what came up? There's three things: bodybuilding.com, Muscle Farm. Remember those workouts when they would post those?
Yeah, I did the Corey Gregory squat every day program in high
Yeah.
school. It works.
And Elite FTS, those three. Muscle
Yeah,
Farm used to
those
have
three.
some pretty cool stuff.
Mm-hmm. I remember T Nation was another one.
T
We've all
Nation.
heard of that. Um, what was Tiger Fitness? That was Mark Lobliner, MTS
Which,
Nutrition. That was his website.
Mark, you have the best chocolate chip, mint chip fucking
Protein.
protein powder in the entire world.
Yeah. Um,
Big fans
yeah,
of
that
you,
was
Mark.
yeah, that was back when bodybuilding.com was like free. All the programs were on there for free.
Hmm. I remember there was one from Muscle Farm because they would throw up like a workout of like a either like fitness influencer or a bodybuilder or an athlete. And it was like this was their workout that they did. And like I remember it was like, let me see if I can get it right here. The LaRon Landry, remember him? NFL safety, you got popped for steroids.
Yes.
The LaRon Landry tricep chest and back killer. And it was just flat dumbbell bench. Four sets in this tricep. Flat dumbbell bench press, 8 reps. Machine chest fly, 12 reps. Flat barbell bench press, 28 reps. Like, it's just 8, 12, 28. It's very similar to what we would now call like a Poliquin complex.
Mm-hmm.
6, 12, 25. And then he went into another 4-set tricep, another 4-set tricep, and then another 4-set. I mean, you're doing pull-ups and chin-ups and a U-bar pull down, 1-arm rows, incline barbell bench press after flat barbell bench press. Like
Yeah.
this guy was lifting like a freaking. Or you'd have like the
Dude,
Arnold, when they had the Arnold workouts that they would post.
I like have you ever seen the movie American Psycho?
Brother.
I really like that movie. Have you
Yeah.
seen the I want to read the book. I've heard the book is actually very good. The workout, like like he has a morning routine. Oh, I
Yeah.
do stomach crunches. I can do over 1,000 now. Shout out Nathan Garza, our minor league coordinator. He loves that movie. He can quote any line from that movie at any time.
Amazing.
But the workout routine that's actually listed in that like book, it's like crazy. It's like 1,000 reps. It's like 4x12, 4x12, 4x12. This is like 4x20. Like it's
The Patrick Bateman routine, as mentioned in the movie, 1,000 stomach crunches daily, often done
1,000
with an
morning.
ice pack on the face to reduce puffiness.
Yes, reduce puffiness. My face is a little
Extens-
puffy. I'll put on an ice pack.
Extensive cardio, including 20 minutes on the Stairmasters and 20 minutes on the exercise bike, and weight training. 1,000 crunches a day is insane just in general. You'd
Yeah,
cramp by like 150.
yeah, but that's yeah.
We should do it.
Honestly, that's a challenge. Celebrity workout.
But yeah, like those OG. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I do like you said, like the Dave Tate stuff. We've talked about like before, like I think we've both been like kind of inspired. Like DeMarco's been doing a lot of like more writing lately. I think we would both kind of like to get into that a little bit more. Like that's something that's like a little bit like undervalued, I think, for like learning and understanding. And obviously, like you're like hopefully putting out something good for people to read. But those like old like T Nation and like Elite FTS like forums, bodybuilding.com like forums, like that was good stuff. Like I really like the table talk podcast. He has some good stuff on there.
What I really loved about them is it was completely objective in the sense of like there was no like you'd have like a couple people who were just dickheads and they were gonna fucking argue with anybody. But for the most part, it was like, this is my split. Like, what do you guys think? And everybody would just file in with different opinions of like, this is what you should, I would think you should probably go with this. I like this better. And then at the very end of it, you'd always have the one dude that was like, okay, so recapping off of this is how you guys would like do it. And they would have this program. And it's almost like you'd have 50, 60 people auditing to build this like ideal program. And it's just all the minds like coming together versus now, like everybody is so, I write the perfect thing. Everybody else is wrong. Everyone's wrong. Everyone's wrong. And it was like, everyone's trying to do it so they can sell it. Now it's like, that's what it is. But before it was like, what's going to be the best product? And no one cares. And they would just put that information out there for free. It was simply just to go for it and see, because they all had the common goal. And it wasn't like, let's make hundreds of thousands of dollars off of a program that I'm going to sell and market on Instagram. It was, I want to get jacked. I want to look good.
Yeah.
What do
What
you guys think is
motivates
the
you
best
back?
way? Yeah. Yeah. And it was all a bunch of people like, and like my mom would like walk by as I'm like just sitting there. Like, I remember at the kitchen table, just reading. I would come home from like summer workouts early in the morning. I couldn't drive at the time. So I was like biking there. So I would bike like 3 miles, like through like fields, like not even on roads. Like I was just biking through like cornfields.
Uphill both
And
ways.
yeah, but like it was just so much fun. I remember I would bike through like two cornfields, stop at my buddy's house, and then we would take the snowmobile trail, which ended up was kind of like a hiking trail too. And then we'd bike the rest to the school. We had so much fun. And then we'd go hit the workouts, and then I would like come back. I'd go to work at the fireworks stand that my grandpa owned, and like I'd come home afterwards, immediately flip open the laptop, and I was like looking at like, is there something I could have done better? Like, and I would like, it's so nuts because like I would bring this to I mean, we didn't have a strength coach in high school. We just had our head football coach, and I was like, I'd come to him and I'm like, hey, so I was reading this and like this is how like other people are training. Like I saw some of this stuff, you know, and like I remember like one time it was like, or you would watch like when Stacked would follow, like back when like Stacked was like really big.
Dude, in high school
And they
I would love I read Stacked all the time. Now it's kind of
when
like trash, but it's not the
but it
same.
used
It's
to
more ads.
yeah.
It used to be
Yeah, it's
it.
more, and like they would like follow like an NFL player and they would post a video on like how that NFL player trained. And I remember watching like Eric Berry, and he would like for his warm up, it wasn't like the big piece of the workout, but he would warm up by just basically doing balances on like a 2x4. And it would be like he'd close his eyes and take like 4 steps left, 4 steps right. And it was literally just like the early stages of like proprioception, you know? And I
Hmm.
remember like I bought an eight. I went out to like Home Depot, bought an 8 foot 2x4, brought it to the weight room, like wrote my name on it in Sharpie, and like we had it in the corner. And like before, like I'd get there early, and I would just start doing that before we worked out, because I was like, Eric Berry's doing that. He's an NFL All Pro safety. Like, there's got to be something to it, you know. So I was like, it was always just like, what else is there? There's got to, everyone was always searching for like that extra piece, and that information was so plentiful that, and it wasn't like I said, you didn't have 50,000 people being like, this is fucking stupid. You're stupid for. It was like, okay, I
Yeah, and it
see
was
like why this
behind like a
is
paywall too, or it wasn't with like the intent of like people still like
monetizing.
sold. Yeah, like people still like sold stuff too, but like it's
It was like an afterthought of like, if you don't want to think like I've got all the thinking done for you, not. But like, if you do want to think like all the information's out there, I just pieced it together for $10 if you want a 10-week program.
yeah, it's it
It's
was like
it's not like today.
sharing. Yeah, it's like sharing the wealth of information and then being like, hey, like at the end, like, hey, if you want to like train with my programs, I got them, but not like making the whole video or article like the sales pitch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was I'm going to give you all the information that if you want to do with it as you please, you can do with it. And if like I said, if you don't want to think it all, I've already got it all written down that you can buy.
Mm-hmm.
But if you did you there was always enough there that if you didn't want to buy it, you could figure it out,
Right.
which was so cool. And I just remember like all of those, I remember I got like on bodybuilding.com, they threw like it was because Steve Cook was such like a big dude back then. I remember like they were like, hey, we're doing a 2 week like 4th of July sale. All Steve Cook programs are $1. And I was like, well, I'm buying five. And I remember giving my mom $5 and being like, can I use your credit card? And I bought like they're probably somewhere in like my OneDrive, like just buying like five Steve Cook programs. Like they ended up being like super basic because it was just like that's what it was back in the day. It was like, hey, you're gonna do really basic shit that you're just gonna train over and over and over again and get better. But I was like, this is revolutionary, you know?
Yeah, I remember buying like the Boeing vert program for like helping your vertical jump. Like
Hmm.
now I look back at it and I'm like, oh, it was just like a pretty like well-rounded like
Training
training
program.
program. Yeah, based around like sprinting and jumping. At the time I was like, oh, this is like, oh, I'm jumping higher. This is crazy. I didn't
Yeah.
know shit.
We were like, until I think it must have been like my sophomore year in high school, we were a BFS program. We were a bigger, faster, stronger.
Same.
Which, I
I
mean,
swear that's every high school in the Midwest.
yeah, like BFS was, I mean, that was like the thing.
BFS and Iowa football, baby.
Yeah, so that was literally it. We copied the Badgers, which is based was at the time basically Iowa football, in like 2006. So it was like, hey, you're gonna hit your three compound movements. And then we were like, okay, what do we do with all the accessories? Because BFS only really took like from start to finish, like once you were in the workout, it took like 30 minutes.
Yeah, very short workouts.
Yeah. And I just would have like a stack of logs in like a binder at the end of it to just like roll through to the logs. But then like I could just like I would look at my phone afterwards and I'm like, okay, every other day it was like we're do upper body, lower body, upper body, lower body, because it was like a 4-day program or whatever. And I was like, all right, well then we're gonna hit this arm, like these two trisets that I had from like one of the programs. Okay, we're gonna do like we need calf work. We haven't done calf work, or we haven't done enough hamstrings. So we're going to do like hamstring curls and all this. And then like, I remember sprinting in like the high school hallways because we didn't have an
During the
indoor
winter,
track and during the winter.
yeah,
Yeah.
we would do 40-yard. We would do timed 40s in the high school hallway.
Yeah.
We would do
And you
timed
just felt like
40s,
you were so
handstand
fast because you were,
40s. Yeah, you're flying by all the lockers. You got like people having to like watch out, be like, don't run through or you're gonna get ran over. Yeah,
yeah.
on the, gosh, yeah, we would test 40s. We would test hand time 40s in the high school hallway. Called it Q&A, quickness and agility, every Tuesday and Thursday morning, 6:15. God, we would do the same. We would do the same thing every day. Like there was no like difference. It would always be ladders. We were big on the ladders, the speed ladder, and then it was like the pro agility, 5'10", 5'10", 5 pro agility with like the old tennis ball in the middle. Whoever grabbed the tennis ball first was the winner. What else did we do?
We
We
had
had
a,
those. We had those things where it was like the big resistance. Like you put the belt on, and then like either the coach holds it or you tie it to like a pole. It's like resisted. Like we
it
do like resisted
stretches.
shuffle. Yep, we would do like resisted shuffles or resisted sprints. Inevitably, once in a while, someone would fucking let go. Someone would get smacked really hard in the back. And
We had
then
it. We had it was like a 20-yard hill, and it was like you had the road right behind. It was like a driveway, like right behind our weight room, a culvert ditch, and then it was like a 20-yard, like pretty steep incline hill, like up. And I remember I would be like every time, which in high school you don't know any better. It would be 3 sets of 3 to 5 hill sprints, and those weren't like option, like those were that wasn't like part of the program. And I was like, I'm gonna do those every time we're like squatting or like cleaning when I was younger. And I was like, because I remember I watched like it was like it might have been E60 or like what's the other one that it's like Untold or whatever from ESPN.
mhm.
And I watched it was Walter Payton, and Walter Payton was like my favorite player like growing up. Walter Payton like he wore down a hill of where he would sprint. And which thankfully I saw that, because like I had two buddies that they would just go run, they would jog a mile in the high school hallways instead. And I was like, I don't want to do that. That sounds boring. So I would go out there and I would just run hill sprints on this hill over and over and over again. And I remember I had a pair of like Nike like free run like fours. They were like neon green. I have a picture somewhere on my phone. We would do like cutting drills like on the fucking blacktop, like behind this weight room. I remember I cut so hard one time, I blew out the entire side of the shoe. And I took it home because I was so hyped. I like came home to my parents, and kids are like, "Oh my god, I ruined my shoes." I was like, I like came home, I threw it at my dad. I was like, I'm so strong, I blew out the side of my shoe.
You Zion the shoe before Zion. Like you blew out the
Yeah,
side of
dude.
the Nike shoe before he did.
It was like a neon green Nike Free Run 5, which like is not
Yeah.
a great training shoe.
No, no. Like probably like the fly net material.
Yeah. It
Dude,
was
free
a
runs used to go hard.
maybe it was yeah, it was these bad boys. It was a 3.0. Man, and they had a neon green one with a gray bottom. And I remember like being 15 years old and I blew the side. It was literally this exact shoe right here, but it was
Yep.
gray, and then
I
this
remember
was neon
those.
green. And I remember when I was so hyped. I was like, I'm that strong. Not, oh, this is a shitty shoe.
Yeah.
But my confidence was sky high after that.
Yeah,
Dude,
those shoes used to be all the craze.
they were. And that was like the thing, man. But I just remember like those old high school training were very fun because back then, like you said, information was very plentiful. It was like spread the vast knowledge. So we would go through and we would try all these different things that all these guys were doing. You know, when I found out like rolling the pelvis when you do like a hanging knee raise because Max Tuning said so, and I was like, okay, every time I'm gonna do hanging knee tucks or whatever, I'm gonna make sure I roll my pelvis. Or like when like Mike would talk about like the time under tension. So every time I did a warm up on a bench press, it was like 5 second eccentrics at like 135, just real slow, and it's like all that stuff. And I don't, it's hard to say. You can't say like, oh, I'm a better athlete because of that, but it's like some of that has to
It
play a
had to
part,
have, yeah, it had to have carried over.
just a
The
little bit.
instinct.
Yeah. Because like like we talk about this all the time. Like we fell in love with training because of that. And like physically, I was more capable than a lot of or a lot of high school athletes just because I trained and I cared about training, you know? And then you have, some of that stuff where you're just like, yeah, it was just so much fun. We would spend 2 hours in the weight room after school or before school. Like I would get up at like
Oh,
5 a.m. in the winter and we would go lift before school because that was just like, this is what we're going to do. And you just
yeah.
enjoyed it. You had your buddies that you trained with, you know, and that's another thing too, is like training with somebody is having a training partner makes training better because not only like I live for the hang. Like hanging out with the boys is like me, like that's a great thing. But like when you're doing that, like when we would go when you were at Elon and we would go like on Saturdays like before game day and just me, you, Gabe, like go
Hit up the
let's go
rack.
let's go hit every machine. No plan, like literally like old school, like we're gonna go to fatigue on every upper body machine.
That was the best. That's what I felt like yesterday. And I told you we went to Los Campeones, sick gym in St. Paul, Minneapolis area.
Throw
If you're ever in the
throw
area,
back to our last episode when we talked about it. Go watch that last episode.
yeah, sick gym. Rooney and I basically did that yesterday. But we did it we hit like a bunch of lower body stuff, and then we're like, oh, we got some time left. Let's just rip upper body. Every machine you could ever want.
And it's just, dude.
There's nothing better. There's nothing better.
And my girlfriend she's getting into training a lot more. She doesn't like we obviously like we don't go to a commercial gym because I have Elon and then I have a full setup in my garage, but I want to keep outfitting the garage so it feels more like a little bit of a commercial gym with like some of the machines. Just because it's like as she gets more into it, I'm like, okay, I want to expose her to this stuff
Mm-hmm.
and like kind of I'm gonna mold my training partner.
Dude, I want like a garage gym so bad. I don't have a house. So that's the main thing. but
Yeah, that does make it
but
tough.
but when I do,
I'm getting to the point now where something's got to give because I don't have access to the garage in as far as parking. I have a corner with like my tools and like my toolbox. I have probably a third of it is like my golf simulator, and the other 2/3 is the gym. The hard part is now I'm at a point now where it's like something's either got to get removed to keep outfitting, or like I'm gonna have to move.
Yeah, or you need to build like a shed on your property if you can even do that.
Which I don't know if I have the room in my backyard to do a shed for that, but a bigger house, maybe not even a bigger house, just a place where I can do like a 4-stall garage and then
Yeah,
take over the
or a
entire
basement.
garage.
Dude, a basement gym would be kind of cool.
A basement gym would be sick. In North Carolina, it's tough. No one does basements unless you have a walkout, but a walkout basement gym, also very cool. It's just like some of that stuff is like, especially when it's your own place, it's like you can leave a bar out if you want to. You can, you know, you don't even store the plates on a peg, like, or on like
Put
a
them on the
horn,
floor in a stack.
or like leave them on like a machine. Like I really want to get a combo leg extension hamstring curl machine. Like it's just a large footprint. I don't know where the hell I'm going to put it. I'll figure it out. Who cares? Because that's just sick.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that stuff, man, is like, I mean, we got off the rails here, but you know, just I want that ability. That's like the life. Everyone says like, oh, I want to be a millionaire to, you know, not have to
I
work.
want to have a
It's like
sick garage gym.
I would love to be a millionaire to build a mecha garage gym that like I walk in and I'm like, here's what I'm going to do today.
Mm-hmm.
That's the goal.
Yeah, Mike Isertel has a good setup. He has like a shed on his property and it's like decked out. It's like
He might
$250,000 worth of equipment. He probably it's like it's on his property, but it's like separate. Really cool.
Yeah, his might be the best one. As like him and like C-Bombs. I really like those two.
C-Bums is nice as well.
Um, Juji Mufu has a pretty cool one, but it's very eclectic.
Yeah, it's
Like
like
it get
niche to him.
it's very niche to him, yeah. But it gives me a little bit of anxiety. Like if you were to walk in, you're like, there's no space. And I get like the old school like bodybuilding, like cram machines, everything you can get in there. But then it's like, okay, but now you have a 40 by 30 trampoline. Like use that space, spread things out a little bit. You know? But yeah, Mike's is so sick. Oh, what a great way to finish that at.
Yeah. Get a little review on this bang. I banged it out.
Threw it back.
Bang, yeah. Bang lime pop drop. It does taste like lime. It's not bad. It's weird with the bang. It's like I feel like energy, but it's like damn, that was 300 milligrams. I don't know if I feel a big difference between like 200 and 300. I feel like after 200, if anything, I just want like more. I just want like some alpha GPC or some more nootropics.
Yeah.
So for that reason, it's okay. It's not a bad flavor. It tastes like lime. It's like a sweet lime. Um, they are usually pretty cheap. Like I said, got it on the 2 for $5.50. I got like a purple one, so I'll probably drink that one at some point later this week. Overall, the nostalgia factor is high for sure. The nostalgia factor is high. Probably not gonna. I'm not gonna like be like snuff my nose up at it, but it's definitely not gonna be like a go-to. I'm gonna give it. I give it like a 6.6. It's like slightly below average, I would say, but 6.6.
Yeah.
It's okay. Not a huge fan of the bangs.
Obviously, I've rated Ghost Cherry Limeade before. We love him on the channel. I've done the other Oikos, the chocolate, which I gave a very high review. Vanilla's not as good. It's very meh. Ingredients, price, still the same. The only difference is the flavor, obviously. for the price and for 30 grams of protein in a pretty clean bioavailable, like it doesn't give you, I'm lactose intolerant, man. Like this doesn't make me go fart insanely, and I think that's a big piece. There's probiotics and digestive enzymes in here from the yogurt, which does help. Um, I'd go probably 7.2 on the vanilla. I don't know if it's going to be massive, but like for $27, I would go pick up another 18 and slam all these. Like this could be a daily driver just from the price alone. I still think the best RTD protein shake is the Raw Nutrition. I love those. This is like a solid number 2 out there right now for me. Ghost is very good, but sometimes it's like a little sweet versus like this being it's a more bland flavor, but it's mellow enough that you can just kind of go with it and drink it daily. Whereas like Raw kind of fills that like sweet spot of like very good flavor, but not over the top to where it's like, I don't know if I'll get through a case of these, overall very solid. Probably going to pick another case of these up, hopefully in chocolate, today later on.
Nice. Yeah, I'm gonna have to try those. I've been smashing the core powers, the vanilla.
I mean, unreal.
Yeah, really, really good. But I'll have to pick one of those up if I see it. So.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. We obviously subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts at. There's full video available on all 3 of those platforms. We love you. Follow us on Instagram. Both of our individual Instagrams are attached to bedboys.tv. Definitely go to the website, pick up a Bed Boys Barbell Club or a new Paul Mall V2 hat, t-shirt, or hoodie. All the good stuff around there. There's new designs. We've talked about them enough. They're insanely amazing. I think ours are shipping soon with our first like iterations of it. So I'm pretty happy. Little pump cover, little pastel pink, pastel red, or a pastel blue.
Yes.
I think they're fun colorways. The logo looks sick. We've got Bevy on there. But yeah, go on there, grab some gear, send us a picture of you in the gear. We'd love to have it. But thank you, and we'll see you in the next one.
Peace.